Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we help college, or no, we don't help colleges. We help families simplify the college planning process. You know, Bobby, we've been doing this for what, 3 years? You'd
Yeah.
think I could get that right.
Oh no, it's fun though. It's it's just each week we talk about something new and just it's everything seems so complicated out there and it's really stressful. And so it's nice to kind of like help just say, okay, here's what you really need to think about and don't listen to, all the
All the
gossip network
swirl.
that's saying it's
The
all so
noise.
complicated,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, and we're
That's
continuing our conversation with Donna. So yeah, so we're talking about what colleges are looking for. So Donna, let's get into it.
Thank you. It's good to be back again. And I call that there's a lot of noise out there, and
Yeah.
I call myself the myth buster because parents will hear things and they think, oh my gosh, we're behind. So we just talk about like, okay, this is what you need to be doing. Today we're going to talk about what are colleges looking for. And it depends. I say that a lot too. It depends. So some schools are just looking at grades and did they take, 4 years of English in certain courses. And sometimes they'll also want to look at test scores. And they may say, hey, you had a good this GPA, you're in. Or they may look at that whole package and go make their decisions. Today we're going to focus on the schools that review holistically, which means they're looking at grades, maybe test scores. They're also looking at activities, letters of recommendation sometimes, and essays. And so activities to me is the driver of the essays because, and what I focus on is helping students think about what they generally are interested in. So we'll have conversations about, what kinds of careers they may have an idea already, what they come in with an idea, what have they done to explore that. And some have quite a bit and some haven't. And so we'll talk about that, figure out some activities. They may have interest in different social issues. There's so many out there, not hard to get plugged in, a lot of nonprofits. So we'll take a look at that. And it's really, again, about genuine, authentic interest, not like, all right, this will look good, this particular cause. I'll just show up and, serve for 5 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things, Donna. Okay.
Oh, I do have a question around that. A lot of the families I work with are part of Young Men's Service League, which is a organization of moms and sons that volunteer together.
Mhm.
They do a lot of different activities within that, for different places. How would you want them to write something like that? Because typically they're working there from freshman year to senior year.
Mhm.
Okay. Would it be better to say I was part of Young Men's Service League for 4 years, or better to say here are all the different philanthropies I worked with?
Actually, what would be best is, yes, it looks good that they did this for 4 years, maybe so many service hours a year. But what's really important is which activities were the most meaningful to them within that. Which particular philanthropies did they serve with? And they may have had a leadership role on a particular activity or event. I knew a young man who was like MC of a talent show that they put on for a nursing home. And he had the planning and all that, those sorts of things, not just I served for 5 hours, I doled out ice cream or whatever
Right.
to the senior people. It's what did they learn? What was meaningful from that?
Yeah, that's the thing that I wanted to add. Like, so I've always heard that, the biggest myth is this idea that I remember when I was in high school that everybody thought the Common App lists a lot of rows where you can list activities that you did.
Actually,
But
10, only
right.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's 10 rows where you can fill things in. But I mean, 10 is a lot given from what I've understood is that what colleges would like to see is that you were very committed to 2 or possibly 3 things that you did for 4 years and that you invested a lot in and that you won an award for and that you had a leadership role for. And listing that you spent 1 year, doing this thing, freshman year I played, volleyball, but that I did not like it. So then the next year I tried this and trying that's not what they want to see, and that they want to see commitment and follow through, and that you had a position. And that also, I think, ties into what you're saying, which is passion. And it's, you got passionate enough about it that you kept doing it for 4 years or whatever. Is that kind of what we're looking for?
Yes. I will also give an example. My younger son, he was hearing about student government and leadership and all that year, freshman year, sophomore year. He was like reluctant because he knew that the activities director expected so much.
Mm-hmm.
He took a leap of faith and dove in junior year. Transformative. That was the best teacher he had in high school. He grew. He pushed out of his comfort zone. So I tell students, it doesn't have to be something like, 4 years and this many hours.
Right.
It's where, and he wrote about the growth through that, and there were frustrating things. And so just,
Sure.
yeah. So if it can be shorter term, but meaningful, that's the key thing.
So that's what they're looking for, is the passion and the transformative thing and the thing that you really dove into. And then that's what you should write about. Okay, that's a different way of looking at it. I like that a lot. That makes a lot of sense.
And so when I'm talking with students about their activities, I'll ask them, I call it like 20 questions. And just because I want to know, what did you learn? A lot of students during the pandemic got part-time jobs.
Yeah.
And they had time. Parents are like, great, get off the computer, get out of the house. And they loved making, I'm making money. I could just tell it was a difference. And I thought, there's something to be said. That was I told them that's like the OG activity. Back in my day, you had a part-time job and maybe you did 1 or 2 things at school, and so parents ask me oh, well, will that count? I go, absolutely. They're learning life skills. They have to show up on time. If they don't show up, they lose their job. They have to work as a team. They're learning that a lot of it's grunt work, stocking the bathrooms, mopping the floor, dealing with crabby customer who doesn't like their latte. But it teaches them valuable life lessons. Colleges know that. And so sometimes I had them write about that experience and what they loved about it. They really, many of them just really, they shined, come to a meeting and we'd talk about it. And you could tell that they really enjoyed it.
Well, this is a really interesting thing because students have such a difficult time figuring out what to write about in their essays.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, to show yourself, you need to write about something you have some feeling of passion for. And it makes so much sense to track from those activities. So then not only you're finding the thing they're passionate about so they can actually write something, but also you're tying it to their activities, which is what the colleges want anyway. So that's really a really great idea.
Yeah, the colleges will see the list. I'll tell students, they see your list, but what you're doing is bringing something to light, showing them who you are, why you chose that, what was so interesting to you.
Right.
I sometimes work with STEM students and sometimes STEM boys. They're brilliant, but writing is not their interest.
Right.
And they're, often people a few words, and they may really talk about their robotics projects quite a bit. And you're like, I have no idea what they're doing, but it's amazing. Well, essay shouldn't be about that. And so then I'll ask them a lot of questions. It can be a little uncomfortable, but I'm wanting to find out hey, did that fail? What? And oh yeah. I said, well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And the journey, because colleges go, hey, they've experienced failure. This brilliant student's not going to get to college and experience it. They already have understood what that means, and perseverance.
Oh, that's great.
Huge.
And so that's what we're talking about today is, what colleges are looking for. And sure, I think you kind of mentioned briefly at the beginning, some colleges, they just want to see GPA and, your schedule and your test scores, right? But then others, they want to know that you're going to come and succeed at college and graduate, right? And not transfer. And
what are you going to contribute on campus?
And they want to see that you are going to get involved on campus. You're going to talk to people. You're going to be open to new experiences. You're not going to just hang out with the same clique of people from high school, and that you are interested and will be engaged. Yeah. And this is how you show that in your essays, and it's how you show it through your list of activities, right?
I would say to colleges, there's a shift. In some colleges, they want to see more empathy. They want to see more service to others in a genuine way. And a lot of colleges do huge public, private, big, small service learning opportunities, sometimes the major, sometimes on campus, and they'll shut down the whole school for the day and serve the community.
Oh, that's great.
On the school. And it's powerful. And that's look, some schools, it's a big part of the culture. So you're either going to embrace that or not, and they want to know, do you fit in here with that?
That's great. I think that's so important is that, it's not just a numbers game. They are looking for a class of students that is diverse and of students who will get engaged and who will make friends with people, and they won't just sit in their rooms. They'll get out and they'll join organizations. And that's why, one of the, basic tricks in the college essay is to go look up all those things that are available on the college and say, hey, I did this kind of philanthropy, or I did this kind of service to people, showing
Mhm.
your empathy. But you say, now I've looked up and I see at this college, oh, they have this project. I would really love to join this organization and do this project while I'm at your college. That's the demonstrated interest that we talked about last week, right?
Yeah. It's also when they're often colleges will ask why this college or why this major at this
Sure.
college, and those activities, and then looking up like, oh, hey, they have this and this. I've done this. I want to continue with that. And so talking about that in a genuine way, for
Yeah.
sure.
And it sounds like you're talking about, making a story about yourself,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
Like you need to tell the college some coherent thing about yourself, that this is what I'm like, and then
Mhm.
how that will lead into college. And students are not good at self introspection all the time and figuring out what their story is. So it sounds like, what you do. And I know Kristin does this as well with students in helping them figure out what a good college major would be and what their strengths are. I mean, they
Definitely.
know it inside themselves, right? But they
They
don't know how
do.
to say it, and they haven't thought about
That's exactly right. And I
it.
will tell you, when I brainstorm on essays or we brainstorm the activities, like I'll have them do a rough draft of their activities
Mhm.
based on what we already have talked about. And the Common App has 10 spots. Some students have so many activities. We have to go, okay,
Yeah.
can we combine these? What's the
Mhm.
most relevant?
Yeah.
Relevance is important. Important. Limited characters. It's like an expanded tweet, honestly.
Yeah, it's
And that throws them. So it's really fun to go, how can we powerfully, most of them undersell themselves. And I don't
mhm,
mean that in a crass way, but they just don't know how to promote themselves. And so we
mhm,
talk about, how about if we phrase it this way? Oh, okay. And using those words and into their essays. And then just um, brainstorming for those essays and going, well, what about that? I'll say, I'm not here to psychoanalyze you, but I might feel like,
Right.
and so, and then by the time we end the meeting, it's like, I'll say, how do you feel? Like, oh, I feel relieved. Like I have something to write about. And
Right.
exactly. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. You all do.
Right.
And
And
yes.
they didn't know that that was inside themselves, and I think one of the tricks that I've used over the years that I like a lot is I say, well, wait, okay, if you were telling your good friend or your best friend, why this college or why what you have
Mm.
passion about, what would you say to them? And then suddenly their eyes light up and they're like, well, I would just say blah blah, this and this and this. Say,
Yes.
okay, tell the college that the thing that
Yes.
you would say to your best friend about why I'm passionate and excited about going to this college.
Mhm.
Suddenly now you're all bubbly and excited. But when you try to write your essay, you're like, I am very, you're very stilted and trying to write all formal and use big
Oh,
words
yes.
and stuff. And
Sometimes I see that.
it's
I'll
terrible.
see words that I go, so did you look that up in the
Yeah.
thesaurus?
Can you say that out loud?
If
Right.
it's and I read and pretty good vocabulary, but if there's a word that I'm going, I have no idea what this is. And then
Right.
I'll say, do you think the admissions reader, this is not impressive if they don't know what it is either. So
Yeah.
be genuine, really authentic
Yeah.
and genuine.
Yeah.
And
That's why that trick is fun, is because you get genuine when you talk to your close friends or whatever. Right.
yeah,
And,
yes.
and you talk less formally. And that's a big part of it. A lot of this it's a relief to hear it, I think, for a lot of people, because it's everything seems so scary and complicated, right? And as you said, the noise out there will make you feel like, oh, if you don't do these five things correctly, you're not going to get in or whatever. But you see
No.
that it's like it really is. You need to talk to someone. You need to like figure these things out. But I
Yes.
think this is a really good starting point of like realizing how to get
Yeah, and there's not one formula, like, there isn't, like,
in.
I would have an example. Last year, I had a number of students get into UC Berkeley, which was
Mhm.
remarkable. Like, I was amazed, like, wow, great. And they were all so very different from one another. But what was very common was they took a lot of initiative to serve other people. Now they were brilliant students, and
Right.
there were a lot of other, they had leadership and all that, but they really were genuinely serving others in meaningful ways.
No, that's
And
wonderful.
now I can't say that's the ticket to the Holy Grail at any particular college,
Sure.
but they were genuine, and it was really clear in their essays. That's really the place to shine. Some schools will take a resume, but essays really, as you said, you're telling your story. That's what they want to know.
Yeah.
And they read thousands. Some schools, it's hundreds of thousands. UCLA, I think it was 150,000 this last year.
Oh, essays? Oh,
That's a lot of essays, right? So,
oh boy.
compelling story. And then it gets them really going, oh, sometimes students will think, well, everybody does that. I go, no, they don't.
Right.
You may think so on your peer group. I had a young man come in one time, and he was talking about, he learned Japanese. I go, you learned Japanese? You didn't have that at school. He said, no. I said, well, so I wanted to know, how'd you get interested in that?
Right.
Tell me why. And he stuck with it. He, to the point that he had to go to a major city a few hours away. He wanted to take the assessment.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, well, I just wanted to do that. I go, you're going to write about this.
He did all that, and without it being a school class? That's insane. That's amazing.
But he did it because he was genuinely interested.
And didn't even think he needed to mention that on his college app, when that's the most important thing.
It was huge.
There's your commitment, passion, excitement, hours spent beyond bettering yourself. That's amazing.
And it's not an easy language either.
Oh my gosh, no, it's so hard.
I think you guys brought up a really key point, and I see this all the time with my students as well, is they don't realize how special they are.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be this like outrageous thing.
No.
Sometimes it's some of the smaller things that they do that you're like, that's special. And to be able to talk about that with names and, I spent X amount of time on this, and really like putting those details in is meaningful.
This one young man that I worked with who got into Berkeley, one of the things he did among a few, he didn't have the classic that concerned his mom, the classic activities that everybody was doing. But as I got to know him, and he would talk about things, and I'd ask him things, and he was just so humble. He was the one that was tutoring his friends because he could help. He could help them. He goes, well, I just, I like math, and they seem to get what I'm talking about. He also was one, he had friends who'd been through some harrowing things. And even one time he talked to his AP US history teacher. Nobody leaves that class. He said, and it was during COVID. It was during this, so they were on Zoom. Mr. So-and-so, I have a friend who's really going through a hard time, just came out of rehab, and I really need to go and sit with him and talk with him. And he was this way with his friends. He was the one that they would talk to. And I said, you are such a genuine and authentic young man, and you need to make sure we show this in your application.
Wow.
And but that's not the big activity. He just,
it's just really a thing that's about him. And that's interesting too, because it's right. And it's hard to write that about yourself. And so you need a little guidance to figure out how to write that without it sounding strange or fake or something like that. But it can be done, and it can be done in a very sincere and meaningful way. And that's really amazing. And so that's, I think, just kind of to put this all together, like it's, so activities is a thing, and you might have lots, or you might have just a few or whatever, but it's about figuring out how to present it in the right way, where it tells a story about you, where it shows what your passion was, where it shows that you had passion and commitment about something. And then you bring that in your essays as well.
Yes.
And then you mentioned a minute ago, that you also can submit a resume for some schools. And that's what next week we're going to talk about, right? Is what do they care about with respect to jobs, right? And how does that relate? And also like jobs, like what you do in your summers and things like that, right?
Absolutely. Yes, it's not spending the summer on playing video games.
Right.
Yeah, unless your goal is to be going to video game design.
Right, exactly.
Yes,
that's right.
But so that's what, as we're doing this whole month of talking about all these things, it's great to focus in on each of these things. And I think that's nice to have that as a separate conversation. Next Wednesday at the same time, we're gonna talk about how all of that can fit in, and really, for those who have, freshmen or sophomores, right, you can start thinking about how to productively use your summers, where you figure something out, because now we can do that again. During COVID, we kind of
Yes.
had to skip that for a little while. It was
Mhm.
hard to go out and do something productive. At least you had to stay
Mhm.
home and learn to cook or something like that, right? But
Mhm.
now we can do things again. So this is very exciting. I really, really love it.
All right, guys, thank you so much. And I will see you